like, I'll tell you why I did the cheat kiss. I didn't, they could steal, right? And I was like, me and Huda had this crazy electricity between us. And I was like, I kind of panicked. I'm gonna keep it a whole stack. I panicked. And I was like, what can I do to not get stolen? Okay, I can get the cheat kiss. So I wasn't even that already liked her that much. I just didn't want to get her stolen to keep it a stack. I was like, I want to really explore this. And then once we had 2 or 3 convos, I was like, holy fuck, I really want to explore this. And then not gonna lie, like this was a mistake on like both our part. We got really intimate really soon. And that kind of.
Hey guys, welcome to Little Black Button 91. Listen, we're breaking down the interview with Jeremiah and Nick Viall. Can I be honest with you? I'm going to break it down in a different kind of way. I hope you guys are actually ready for this, because I'm going to take it from from the way that I coach people. I'm going to break this down in this particular way, because there was a lot of things that Jeremiah showed in this interview that I kind of proved my point, I think, about Jeremiah. He's a decent fella, he's a decent guy, but he does have attachment issues. Same one as I do, you know what I mean? And I really saw the dismissive avoidant aspects. And so I'm going to break down the video from that perspective. So if you're new to the channel and you're new to what we do, I know you've watched some of my lives. Maybe I'm a bit funky, a bit more energetic. This won't be one of those lives. I'm going to be breaking things down. So if you're here, grab a pen, grab a paper. I'm about to solve some relationship issues for you. Some of you are going to realize that you've been dating this kind of person, or you are this person in a relationship. So we're going to break it all the way down for you. So again, like it, share, subscribe, click on that wonderful bell button for notification of uploads. Jeremiah really exposed those things about himself and Huda, not in a crazy way. Actually, he was very respectful in the interview, and he actually treated Huda's name with respect. I can't lie to you. So it was a really good conversation. Now, Nick Viall wanted to say this first and foremost. When I watched the interview, I'm going to speed past his points because he talked way too much. This was an hour interview, and he spoke for probably like 60% of it. Like, I thought the comments were joking. When I watched that, I said, damn, he spoke more than the guy who he was interviewing. I was confused. Is it your interview or Jeremiah's? We don't need to know that you are similar to him. We don't need to keep knowing that you're like it. We don't need to keep knowing those things. Hand over the mic. You know what I mean? But listen, we're going to take it all the way from the very beginning, because I want to be able to explain things from the jump as well. So let's start at the very beginning when they have this conversation, Jeremiah and Nick Viall. Strap yourselves in.
I was like, okay, I've seen them before.
All right. Oh, you ready to rock and roll?
Let's do it.
Jeremiah, I appreciate you joining the Viall Files. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks so much for having me, man. I'm happy to be here.
I guess as a start, like, how are you feeling? I mean, like, I say this to every Islander I talk to, but I'm always just kind of blown away by this experience that you guys go through, where you enter the villa, obscure people. Some of you guys have followings more than others, but that being said, like, you come out international stars. I know it's Love Island USA, but this is the show.
Gratitude, because I ain't gonna lie. When I came out of there that first night, I was pissed. Like, I was trying to keep it calm, cool, and collected leaving, but I was pissed because I was like, damn, my comeback story, got cut short. Like, they just seen how happy I was. I was doing things, right this time. And I still got the boot. So I was like, damn, bro, I was low-key mad. But then the more, I'm talking to my family, I'm talking to people here, and they've been amazing. So now I'm just grateful and excited to see what's been going on, because I don't know. I've heard bits and pieces, but I don't know like a lot what's going on because I still don't have my phone. But yeah, no, I'm just like gratitude. That's all I can say.
Well, that's good that you're in that headspace.
Now, first one was, him coming out of the show, we were disappointed. We wanted to see him go back. Whether he will, we don't know, because he lives in the hotel that Hannah was also in as well. But I want to be honest with you. Listen, if he doesn't go back in, I think the Lord is saving him. I did the videos, and I was talking to everyone about, that, it's a shame that he got kicked off. I actually think that it's good he stays off the show. I think sometimes these things happen. I was interviewing some people from Ready to Love a couple of years ago, and an incident happened to one of the guys on the show. And actually, it was a blessing that he got off that show, because had it continued, it would have been worse. Had it continued, it would have been worse. Why? Because some of the things that happened on that show would have been detrimental had he stayed on it. So this is one of those shows where maybe Jeremiah has been blessed to get off, because he's come out here intact, reputation on a high, people like him, you know what I'm saying, too, and he's actually gone out on a good note, you know what I'm saying, too. So sometimes life just hands you those things, all right? Just go a little more.
But I had a girlfriend at the time, so I was like, I can't do it. I'm in a relationship, But then they reached out after we had broken up. Well, she broke up with me. I can say she broke up with me like a month after. And I was like, you know what? This would be just something just to get me back out there, just to get me back out there.
Yeah.
And I was like, it seemed like a cool opportunity. Like, I've seen, couples come out of it. And I was like, okay, this seems like an actual legitimate thing to do. And yeah, I got a DM on Instagram. I was like, let's do it. And then, I just kept progressing through the things, episodes of season 6. And I was like, I think if I watch anymore, I'm gonna psych myself out of it. So I just watched 3 episodes and was like, let's go see. What
Yeah,
this
right.
is
It's
about.
always like a balance between like, I feel like Ace did a lot of homework. Sorry, Ace, I was a little bit of a dick. But yeah, it's a balance between like knowing what you're getting into. I always tell people like in reality TV, or like certainly I always tell fans.
I have a girlfriend until I was 22, 23. So I just like would find a girl I liked and just talk to her for like 6 months, talk to her for a year. Like I hated labels. I hated like, and I didn't hate, but I just didn't want labels. I wanted all that freedom that came with it. Like anniversaries, I didn't want to do any of that. And then I finally got into my first relationship, and then
All right, well, this is our first understanding. Now we're going to break something down. I'm going to go backwards slightly because we need to pay attention, okay? I want you to listen to what he's actually saying before you think that he's a douche or anything like that. I want you to listen very carefully to what he's actually saying in this aspect about how he deals with relationships before he gets into the villa. Because actually, this is what's going to give us a background of the way that he deals with things, as to why he did what he did with Huda, and why he was also in therapy for the last 2 years, he says, right? Listen to this.
like I never dated, like from like I didn't have a girlfriend until I was 22, 23. So I just like would find.
So wait, first and foremost, no girlfriend till 22, 23. He's 25. So he's only recently started dating. Okay.
And a girl I liked and just talk to her for like 6 months, talk to her for a year. Like I hated labels. I hated like, and I didn't hate, but I just didn't want labels. I wanted all that freedom that came with it. Like anniversaries, I didn't want to do any of that. And then I finally got into my first relationship.
Now let's pause right there. He said he would talk to a girl for 6 to 8 months, and then he don't like labels, and all that kind of stuff. He wants the freedom. Now, before you think he's playing a game, what I know about attachment styles, and I'll explain this in a second or two, is that he don't like being trapped. So it takes him a very long time to vet the person in front of him, that he can trust them and that he can open himself up to. Now, this is an attachment issue. It's an intimacy issue. Very similar to what I said about Alandria on Love Island. He has a very similar attachment. And so what he does is that he has to be your friend. He has to be close to you for a very long time to observe, to vet, to allow himself to not feel like he's being caged in, so he doesn't feel like he's being controlled and overwhelmed by the other person. And then when after a few months, like 6 to 8 months, like he said there, right, then he can commit himself to the relationship. Then he can become this person who's a boyfriend, and he can then feel like he's in a relationship without feeling like he's being restricted. Why am I telling you this? Because actually he comes on to say something very similar about him and Huda, about the way that he dealt with her, that for him, he wanted to become the super boyfriend, but unfortunately, the expectations that he put on himself, he told Huda, and Huda expected those expectations, but he couldn't match up them because it hadn't been that amount of time just yet. So we're gonna come to that as well. So we're gonna break this down for you guys as well, right? So first of all, before I go any further, okay, so we're gonna bring this in. Attachment styles simply is this. John Bowlby is a British psychologist who observed young children and the way that they began to interact with their caregivers, okay? All right? And how he also did this. And I'm going to just put a slide up so you can actually see this. Because like I said, I'm going to teach today, so I want you guys to understand this, right? So attachment styles is simply this. It's a psychological explanation for the emotional bonds that are created in a relationship. So it's the way that you attach to people in relationships. And what John Bowlby discovered was that there were 3 types of attachments. I was avoidant, there was anxious, and there was secure. Okay, what I believe Jeremiah exhibits are dismissive traits. Okay, a second psychologist came along called Mary Ainsworth, and she developed a 4th attachment style, which is called fearful avoidant, which is what I believe Huda is. So when you get a DA and an FA, a dismissive avoidant and a fearful avoidant, they are both of the same tree of avoidance, but the fearful avoidant carries both an anxious and an avoidant style of perspective. Now, I'm explaining this so that you can actually understand what happened between Jeremiah and Huda, okay? So that attachment aspect, it's all about watching how children bond with a caregiver, and a dismissive person has grown up in a particular household. The household that they've grown up in is a household where their needs were never met. So their emotional needs weren't met. So if they were in a household, they were neglected, they were left alone, they were having to figure things out on their own, okay? All right, they had to be in a household where the caregiver was emotionally distant or overly focused on promoting independence or being inconsistent. Affection was restricted. The emotional expression was discouraged. Like, don't cry, be strong. A man doesn't do this. A man doesn't do that. If you're a man, you don't stiff upper lip, be stoic, right? Emotional needs were often pushed away or told, I can't deal with that right now. Or you were punished for having emotional needs. Right? You are praised for self-reliance. If you're somebody you start cooking early, or you started taking yourself to school, you were just kind of left to it, right? and you're like, oh, you're so mature, I don't worry about you because you're the one that, is so responsible. But actually and truly, you're a kid, right? Or parents are unavailable because they're working or trauma or some type of addiction, which leads the child to actually be emotionally neglected. This is what begins the dismissive avoidant journey. And again, to see some of those behaviors, Jeremiah talks about being shut down, a failure to be able to communicate his emotional needs. He talks about being overwhelmed. He talks about how, he couldn't, he was afraid of meeting certain expectations, right? And those are all attachment issues that are dealing with the avoidant trait of things. So let's listen again. I'm going to point these out as we're playing the clips so you can actually understand what's going on.
And then a month in, I cheated, and I didn't know how I could do that because I prided myself on, I read books. I'm this guy. I'm the best. So yeah, like two years ago, a month into my relationship, I cheated, and I had to look at myself in the mirror. So I'm like, oh, I like trumped myself up my head to be this great guy. And I was like, okay, how come I didn't have the strength to say no to this girl? Like, what made me like not strong in that moment? So I was like, I got to figure this out, because not only did I hurt someone I loved, I hurt myself. So then I went to therapy, and I'm still in therapy for like 2 years now, just to see like what was going on. So that's what the work looked like. 2 years ago, I started therapy.
Now, as he just said right there as well, he actually went into therapy for 2 years and has been still ongoing for him. So that's why we can see that Jeremiah. That's why Jeremiah, I think, triggered the boys. I told you this. This is why I think Jeremiah triggered the boys. Because when someone's done the work and they're trying to be better, the other people that are unwilling to move and to grow, they become anxious and annoyed by your growth. So as you saw with Ace was trying to control Jeremiah. One thing about a dismissive avoidant is their individualism. You can't push them to do nothing. They want to do what they want to do. Okay, all right. They want to move at their own drum. They want to go when they want to go. They want to do this when they do this. If they believe the sky is blue, the sky is blue for them, right? And so when Jeremiah was encountering Ace, what Ace was trying to do was trying to let Jeremiah fall in line. But Jeremiah has a very strong compass of self, a bit like Olandria. You can't force Olandria to do anything. Hence why she's got thick boundaries. So Olandria will make sure that she does what she wants to do. Same with Jeremiah. And that will pee off certain people because it means you can't be controlled. That's what was happening with Ace and Jeremiah. The fight between Ace and Jeremiah was that Ace would try and tell Jeremiah things, and unlike Nick, unlike Austin, unlike Taylor, they would obviously cartel to Ace's whims of manipulation. Jeremiah didn't. As we saw in several times, Jeremiah will be like confused as to what Ace is actually really saying and tell him, no, I don't believe that. Right? I like what I like, and I'll do what I do. And actually later on in an interview, he actually says for 2 weeks he was fighting the boys. So again, this is that beating of their own drum aspect, right? That he was going to do what he wants to do. And I think that's very, very important in that space. Okay, let's push a bit forward as well, as you were saying.
Got back together, and then I had to start therapy and started working on myself, because I was like, how could I have done that when I thought I was just a great guy?
It's obviously not cool what you did, but obviously like,
and that's what I did. Like the latter part of the relationship of just like trying to do too much to make up for what I did like 2 years ago. Sure. And so that was like the last part of the work, was just like putting myself first, and like self-trust and getting rid of self-doubt and like self-love and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that did.
And again, what is highlighted is very powerful. Again, that he said he had to get rid of, missed a little part. He said shame, the self-doubt, the guilt, obviously, of cheating, but also as well in terms of not allowing yourself to actually choose what you want to choose without feeling like you're creating conflict or causing chaos for other people. Because again, when it comes to dismissive avoidance, some of the difficulties that they face is that they want emotional connection, but they struggle with the intensity, right? So someone's intensity, if they're moving at their pace and they're very quick to want you and desire you, and you're not ready for that, right? It can be very difficult for dismissive avoidance to kind of communicate that they feel that way. And so actually what ends up happening is, due to the anxiety of the emotional connection with certain people, they start to avoid and become passive aggressive. They take their space without necessarily discussing and saying to you, hey, I need space, right? Which is what was starting to happen between him and Huda. Once he realized her behavior was going left, notice that he didn't call her out. The reason why he wasn't calling her out was because he was becoming more passive in the way that he was dealing with it. He was going to start avoiding her, rather than actually speaking up and saying, hey, we've got conflict right now. I don't like what's going on. Let me tell you this now. Your behavior, right, is inappropriate, and it's actually unbecoming of what I want as a healthy relationship. Like, what's going on with you? Why are you calling me the B word out of my name? And instead of actually stepping forward to confront it, the dismissive avoidant tends to kind of step aside from it. They don't want conflict, because conflict leads to rejection. All conflict leads to shame and embarrassment and guilt. And they don't want to feel those feelings because they felt that as a child when it came to their emotional needs. And the final aspect is when it comes to conflict for dismissive avoidance, they also feel like in that space that their emotional needs won't be met. So what is the point of me telling Huda to stop doing what she's doing if she won't stop it anyway? Because he really believes his emotional needs are not important because that's the kind of household he grew up in, right? So let's fast forward it a little bit more again, and I'll break it down.
Yeah, then one day it kind of just blocked each other and everything. So she has no idea. And honestly, I don't know what is going on with her either. I hope she's good though.
Okay. Yeah, but you got nothing but love and respect, I'm assuming.
Oh, for sure. No, she's amazing. Like I wish her the best. She's gonna do great. Like she's amazing.
Obviously, she seemed to drive a lot of that as well. But like you also, like, I mean, we're 5 minutes into the show and you were like swerving other girls. And I'm like, this is fucking Love Island. What the fuck is this guy doing? Like, what? Like, huh? And, you know, so like your critics out there, this guy falls fast. He's love bombing. I don't know. Again, like, I don't think people nowadays are using the word love bombing accurately. Like it's, it's not just because someone says I love you in the first couple of weeks because they get really excited and infatuated with somebody. But that being said, again, like I was a young man who, like, you know, I really wanted to like emulate my parents' relationship. I wanted to be in a relationship and I was very picky. But when I liked a girl, you know, and I would just, you know, I feel like that kind of relates to maybe how you were a little bit, or am I so focused on Huda?
Honestly, like that's not who I am at all. Cause I've only like been in love like 2 or 3 times. Not that I was in love with Huda or even told her I loved her, but yeah, no, like I've never been that type. Like
and before he goes any further, first and foremost, I need to highlight this point. He never told Huda that he loved her, but Huda told him he loved her. Now I want to say this very, very, very strongly. A lot of the people, Huda fans and Huda stans, and even people that weren't Huda stans, incorrectly use love bombing. And here's why. Because a lot of times people are triggered by men. They feel that men are automatically a villain before they've actually looked at the evidence. So when the Jeremiah and the Huda situation actually started, they failed to look at the evidence. They did the exact same thing that Huda did. They went by the emotions and their feelings, right? And failed to look at the critical evidence right in front of them. When we were looking at the Huda and the Jeremiah situation from the very beginning, it wasn't Jeremiah who said, I love you. It was her. Twice we've seen it on the show. But we were calling him out for being love bombing. And I was like, this doesn't make sense, right? Love bombing is an intentional manipulation technique where you actually love the person and actually fully try to persuade the person by being overly caring, loving, genuine, all that kind of stuff. But then you have to rip the rug from underneath their feet. He never did that. Right? It's an intentional ploy to lower your guard and your defenses. That's not what was happening. This was a mutual thing by both of them where they were excited by each other. So that's just something I want to point out for you guys. Let's just a bit more.
With my only girlfriend, we started talking in January and we didn't date till August. So it's like 8 months, you know? But with Huda, it was like, I'll tell you why I did the cheat kiss. They could steal, right? And I was like, me and Huda had this crazy electricity between us. And I was like, I kind of panicked. I'm gonna keep it a whole stack. I panicked. And I was like, what can I do to not get stolen? Okay, I can get the cheat kiss. So I wasn't even that already liked her that much. I just didn't want to get her stolen to keep it a stack. I was like, you know, I want to really explore this. And then once we had 2 or 3 convos.
Now pause it here. This is another understanding of, again, when it comes to dismissive avoidant aspects, right? You notice here that he said about he didn't want to get stolen. I think this is really important. Him not wanting to be stolen, instead of him wanting to communicate to Yelisa to say, hey, I don't want to embarrass you, I don't want to shame you, I don't want to be stolen. Instead, when she kissed him, he used a passive aggressive technique and turned his cheek, so she kissed the cheek, and so that it then showed her that actually I don't want you. Now I think it was actually a really cool thing that he did, but we're going back to obviously attachment styles. That was a passive move because the truth of the matter is he did not want to be stolen. So why couldn't he communicate that? Because of fear of conflict and fear of embarrassing somebody else and shaming them. And really and truly because he put himself in that position by actually projecting how he would feel into her shoes, rather than actually saying, these are my needs. Because going back to obviously dismissive avoidance childhood, a lot of people never had their needs met. And so they don't believe that their needs are a priority. But I need to get my needs met somehow. So I'm going to take it rather than asking for it. So in this space with the Yelisa situation, right? When Yelisa came, he didn't want to be stolen. He liked Huda. He wanted to explore that. And immediately when this girl came along and tried to steal him, he wasn't for it. Now he could have communicated and said, hey, I appreciate you coming over, but I'm good where I am, right? Because either way, when he turned his cheek, he still curved her. It wasn't any easier turning your cheek because it's still a curve. But in his mind, it seemed easier because he didn't have to say it. And it seems like it gives an air of mystery to do that. But the reality of the situation is you've communicated very, very clearly. Okay? right? So that comes from a place of the lack of the assertiveness, because of you not being used to being able to say your needs and not feeling guilty for saying your emotional needs. Okay, all right. So that's really important to understand how he said that. Now, I also think there's someone else playing here. He cheated in his past relationship. That relationship only ended in February before he went on the show. In June? So the relationship that he ended it in February. You know what I'm saying? Like, he had cheated recently. Sorry, this was a couple of years ago. So I apologize. I said it recently, but he had cheated in that relationship a couple of years ago, and I think that plays on his mind, right? He thought he was a good guy, and I think this was like, okay, I'm on the show now. I like this girl. I am going to not be involved in the shenanigans. You know what I'm saying to you? I'm going to stay true to what I want, and then stay in this place, because actually this comes back down to boundaries. Okay, so one thing that dismissive avoidants struggle with is actually really stating their boundaries. They'll just take it, but stating it can be very difficult. In the sense of what I mean by this is, the struggle is that, let's say, for instance, Yulissa, right? How do I get to know Yulissa without hurting her feelings and without also having to feel any shame or guilt myself? So what ends up happening is, instead of actually going through the process of, okay, I'll be cool with Yulissa, don't worry, and if it comes down to it, I will let her know that I'm not interested and move along. The fear is that you'll be trapped. So what ends up happening is the dismissive avoidant will actually put a hard stop to a lot of interactions. So that between him and Yulissa, he put a hard stop there. The reason being is because that as a dismissive avoidant, they struggle with being able to say their actual boundaries. So at the very beginning, they put a hard stop at there, so that they don't even get there later on, because they don't want a conflict. And to avoid conflict down the line, they're like, I'm gonna put a hard stop here, right here, so that it doesn't even get to that place. Now, while that may seem good, what it does do is it actually stops a lot of relationships, that friendships and stuff like that can actually happen, because actually you've put a hard stop immediately, and it becomes this very rigid wall between you and the other person. By all means, you don't have to choose Yulissa. You didn't have to. But again, it's about that communication. It's about the thick boundaries that you have, but without it being flexible. We'll come back to that in a second or two.
I was like, holy fuck, I really want to explore this. And then, not gonna lie, like, this was a mistake on like both, but we got really intimate really soon, and that kind of set us up for failure, like for the rest of what happened. But yeah.
And when you say intimate, like you guys had sex?
I'm not here to kiss and tell.
I respect that. All right, gotta ask the questions.
Yeah, I get it, man. We got real intimate real soon, and it kind of just like skipped a bunch of steps, and that's what led to, Yeah.
Okay.
Now this is really important, because after this as well, both Huda and also Jeremiah, right? I believe they are dismissive avoidant versus fearful avoidant. Now, I've explained the dismissive avoidant. Let me explain a fearful avoidant. A fearful avoidant grows up in a household where the parents are inconsistent and they are also avoidant as well, right? So that they grew up in a household where the parent was inconsistent and unpredictable in their caregiving. So sometimes they will be loving, some days they'll be cruel. Some days they'll be caring, some days they'll be mean. Some days they'll be loving, sometimes they're just shouty and angry. And there was always an unpredictability with that parent that they were with. The household that they were within may have been chaotic emotionally and physically. They might have been physically abused, emotionally, sexually, sometimes even abused, right? That can formulate in that space. And so the fearful avoidant grows up in a household where there is no safety for them. And so actually what they learn to do is to create masks and characters within themselves in order to survive the harsh environment that they've grown up in. Now, in a fearful avoidant perspective, they create the character, and the character becomes so attached to them that they actually don't realize that they're carrying some of the wounds that they're carrying. So and so in that space, what you'll see is that the fearful avoidant indulges in chaos and self-sabotaging behaviors, because that is the fear of connecting is difficult for them. So they understand that love is harmful. So the dismissive avoidant believes that, for them, that love can equal rejection. But for the fearful avoidant, they see love can equal betrayal, rejection, abandonment. And so they see it as love equals harm. So that's why when a fearful avoidant gets into relationships, they either date people who are chaotic, or they become chaotic themselves, because that is a pattern that they've seen in their own household. And so, like, for instance, my parents were always arguing. So I expected my relationship to be arguing all the time, because then that would be love, because I've always seen that, right? Or, you know what? my parents were physically or emotionally abusive. So I expected that my partner would have some of those tendencies, right? So if they're a little bit abusive, it's not a big deal because I saw it with my parents, or my parents did that to me. And what ends up happening is for fearful avoidance is that their actual boundaries get destroyed. So they deal with parents, especially if they deal with parents that are very cruel, verbally and emotionally. Then their psychosis, the psychology of that fearful avoidant is that they don't believe they're good enough, and they always believe that they deserve the worst. So actually, when things are going well, they actually start sabotaging because they're going, let me sabotage it before it goes wrong by itself. Let me create chaos because there's no way this is going to happen good to me. And this is going to come up because he's going to explain it, how it happened between him and Huda in a few minutes, right? So I'm just kind of preempting you. So for me, I believe that's where Huda comes from. That kind of household where there is chaos, there is a lack of emotional safety, especially children that had to move around different houses. If you're a child that got moved to different houses and you were never really with your parents, but you're with family members or aunties and uncles, and you never really felt safe. And children are kind of really good at picking up cues. And so children can be in environments and they're like, I didn't feel safe. But you don't realize until you get into an adult that you have certain tendencies and behaviors that you don't know where they came from, but actually it's because the environment that you grew up in, right? So this is very important because this is the way that they're going to deal with relationships, because the way that Huda was crashing out is typical of somebody who comes from a fearful avoidant perspective, right? The crash out was so heavy, okay? And then she goes right back. And so the last thing I want to say about this is what you'll see with fearful avoidance is that they are very hot and very cold. 1 minute they're on you and they're hot on it. The next minute they're cold. Leave me alone. I don't, they start withdrawing. And the reason why is because, again, love equals harm, but because they're also overwhelmed by emotional connections. They have both an anxious and an avoidant perspective, meaning they want love, but they fear it at the same time. And then so they get the love, they push you away because they're getting overwhelmed. But when they see you go away, they're triggered again by you leaving them. They're afraid of abandonment, like an anxious person. So they come back clinging back onto you to pull you right back in. But then this creates this, what we call a toxic cycle, where they are pushing and they're pulling, pushing and pulling. And in reality, the reason why they're doing that is because they're not safe. They don't feel safe. Now, that's not always on the other person. Sometimes it's because they feel that the other person's actually too good for them. They start creating toxic, chaotic cycles. But we'll talk about that in a second or two. Okay. All right. We will go there in a second or two. Let's let him explain a bit more, Jeremiah. Okay.
My favorite part about women is the way she looks at me, her smile, and like her smile and the way she looked at me was just so enticing.
Felt so strong.
Hold on. Listen to this very carefully.
Wrong. Where do you think that came from?
It was definitely like her gaze and the way she, like, when I think my favorite part about women is the way she looked at me, her smile, and like her smile and the way she looked at me was just so enticing.
Pause. This is really important. This is one of the most major things that people don't know, right? When DAs and FAs get together, especially when there's a man and a woman specifically, right? The core wounds of a dismissive avoidant person, let's say Jeremiah for this instance, right, is that being emotionally neglected is also being unseen. Okay, being emotionally neglected from a child perspective is also being unseen. Now, what did you say? What he said about Huda just now, right, is that what he loved about Huda was her glare. I would have never understood this until last year. Something happened to me, and I said I've never experienced that before. But I was trying to figure it out for a good few months what was happening to me, and I said the same thing happened to him. It's the same thing happened to me. What he's describing in this moment is being seen, but being seen in a very intense manner. The fearful avoidant has an ability to see the DA in a particular way, right? The fearful avoidant has a character that they put on. Someone might say love, but it's not love bombing, but they say love bombing, but it's not love bombing. What they're doing is they're putting their best foot forward, because when you start a relationship, there's no stakes. When you start interacting with somebody, there is no stakes. And for the fearful avoidant, their biggest fear is that if you see who they really are, they'll be rejected, abandoned, or betrayed. So what the fearful avoidant does is creates a character. It's called the representative, as we always talk about. That representative, okay, has to be liked, because if they're not liked, the fearful avoidant becomes fearful of they'll be harmed, whether that's physically, emotionally, whatever, right? So what the fearful avoidant does is put its best shoes on, best dress on, and they put their best hair in, and they start acting their best self. And they actually do everything they're impossible in their power to see you. What he experienced is that she spoke to his core wounds of a child. That's why he liked Huda. He doesn't realize what happened. What happened was she was so excited. She desired him. She wanted him. She liked him. And for a DA, a dismissive avoidant person, Jeremiah, that is new to you because in your childhood, that's not what happened to you. You were dismissed. You were pushed aside. Your needs were not met. So when the FA comes, the fearful avoidant comes, and they're looking at you like, oh my God, I just want you. I just like you. There's something about you that I just want to be around. When she gives him those looks, it speaks to his inner child that's not been healed yet. And he's excited and he doesn't know what happened. He's been hit. He's been struck. Someone might say love at first sight. He don't know what's happened. He's responding from a place of the childhood wound. He doesn't get it. Okay. So when he says about the gaze of Huda, that's what he's talking about. It's to feel desired and to feel wanted, which a lot of us in our childhood never had. We weren't desired, we weren't wanted. Hence why we go and choose bad people for us in relationship dating, because they give us a sense of they desire me, they wanted me. Even if it's sexual, you'll still take it because it's like, at least they wanted me, they desired me, something my mom and my dad never gave me. And so that's what he's talking about when he says the gaze of Huda. It's the depth of the looking at her. Like she showed him that I want you. There's something about you. You're valuable. You're worthy with that look. It's deep. Okay? It's deep.
It felt so strong. Where do you think that came from?
It was definitely like her gaze and the way she, like when I think my favorite part about women is the way she looks at me and her smile. And like her smile and the way she looked at me was just so enticing. And then we had a lot of conversations about like values in the beginning. I'm not gonna be rude, but I kind of got like emotion fish. Like she said she's emotionally mature in her values. So we lined up on a bunch of those. So I was like, okay, cool. She checks all my physical boxes and a lot of my spiritual, emotional. So why would I go? And that was where my head was at. Not saying it was the right thing to do, but I don't regret it. But yeah, I was like, okay, she's so fucking dope. Like I'm not gonna ruin that and go talk to girls I'm not interested in. That's where my head was at in the beginning.
Okay, that makes sense. You were kind of caught saying like early on, you know, like, oh, if we win.
Emotion fish. Like she said she's emotionally mature in her values. So we lined up on a bunch of those. So I was like, okay, cool. She checks all my physical boxes and a lot of my spiritual, emotional. So why would I go? And that was where my head was at. Not saying it was the right thing to do, but I don't regret it. But yeah, I was like, okay,
So he says, obviously, yeah, and it's funny because he actually said the first thing that he said is it's really interesting. Okay. All right. The first thing that he said is very interesting. He said that she takes a lot of my physical, and I think it's on we a Freudian slip. He says he said physical, emotional, spiritual, right? I think the fact that he said physical first is very important. Because what happens to both men and women is that a lot of times the physical clouds the emotional. I was talking to my boys the other day and I was telling them, and if you've coached with me before, by the way, if you do want coaching, please reach out to me. We do a free 30-minute discovery call, okay, before we do any coaching. So if you do want to see what kind of coaching I do, what it's about, if you're interested in coaching, sign up to the free discovery call. It's 30 minutes and it doesn't cost you a thing, all right? So if you're interested and you need some coaching, you've been thinking about it, well, take a dip in the pool, all right? But let's go back to what I'm saying to you. Okay, so I think he mentioned the physical on purpose because here's what ends up happening between DAs and FAs. Surface. A lot of times it's surface. What I mean by that is the surface in terms of like the first initial spark is attraction for most people. Okay, all right. The first initial aspect is the emotional aspect. And so with the emotional, with the physical aspect, you're excited about the attraction. You're excited about the pull, the liking of how fine that man or that woman is, right? So it creates this energy in a storm. What's supposed to happen though is that we're supposed to dig a little bit deeper to really understand each other emotionally, right? But remember, they had intimacy quite early on. So when you add intimacy, it speeds up a lot of things, and then what it does is like it paves like it paves over the cracks. So instead of actually being objective about the relationship you're in and taking it step by step, you run and you do a long jump. And so he actually says that earlier on that they skip some steps. So in this space, the physical actually overtook the emotional. The emotional aspect caught up later on. Because what ends up happening is when you are physically engaging with somebody, sexually engaging with people, right? You are speeding up the communication, you're speeding up the attraction, and that stops you from being able to see things as it is. Okay, so this is really important. This is really, really important as well. So the DA and the FA, as they have the dismissive avoidant and fearful avoidant, also have issues with emotional intimacy. Hence why sex now becomes a form of communication. Okay? All right? Sex becomes a form of communication for the dismissive avoidance and fearful avoidance. They can communicate on that level because it doesn't require for them to be naked emotionally. It requires them to be physically naked. Do you get what I'm saying to you? So what that does, it creates a false sense of security that we are deeper than we actually are. Yet I don't even know how you are. And I love the story in the Bible because I always said this. Jacob in the Bible ended up marrying Leah first, not Rachel. And I asked the question, how the hell did that happen? How is it that Leah can get inside the bed and you wouldn't know that's not Leah and it's not Rachel? I said, then he might not know her that well then. Maybe he didn't know Rachel as well as he thought he did. Maybe he only knew her through the physical appearance of seeing her, but never actually understanding who she was. See, when you get to know someone, their aura and their energy, right? And you know their vibe, even their footsteps, you start to be in tandem. You start to know them. And that's why the Bible says, well, when you have sex with someone, there's a knowing. So then I realized that Jacob didn't really know Rachel that well. Although that's the one he loved. He didn't know Rachel that well. That's why Leah could come in the middle of the night and get into bed and he didn't question it. You know what I'm saying to you? What, she didn't smell different? Her hair wasn't different? Like her voice wasn't different? You just went and started smashing straight away, Jacob? You didn't ask no questions? That told me that you didn't really know Rachel that well. Because when you get into bed and someone gets into bed with you, you kind of feel it, the energy, the voice, the vibe, everything. You can feel that once you know the person very well. What am I saying? I'm saying that sex will stop you from looking at the person on a deeper lens. And that's why he mentions the physical first rather than the emotional, right? And so your emotional needs don't get met till way later on. And by then, it may be too late. Okay? All right? By then, it may already be too late.
He's so fucking dope. Like, I'm not going to ruin that and go talk to girls I'm not interested in. That's where my head was at in the beginning.
Okay,
Now, that's pretty important that he said. He said he didn't want to ruin things.
Spiritual, emotional. So why would I go? And that was where my head was at. Not saying it was the right thing to do, but I don't regret it. But yeah, I was like, okay, she's so fucking dope. Like, I'm not gonna ruin that and go talk to girls I'm not interested in. That's where my head was at in the beginning.
Okay.
Now, of course, he wasn't interested in the other women, right? But I also do believe that for him, that he also didn't want to. He also felt like two things. I think two things happening here. Number one is that when the DA meets someone like Huda, they meet their girl that they like, that sees them, right? That has the ability with their gaze, with their energy, their aura, to show them that they are all about them. Because remember, the childhood wound of a dismissive avoidant is that it wasn't always about them. It was always about everybody else. Okay? All right? So the other aspect is that when Huda looked at him, when Huda behaved with him, when Huda was saying, like, I'm not kissing nobody either, when Huda was saying that she's going to be loyal and that she's only going to be for him, there's no way he can mess that up, because actually for him, he's like, no. She's doing everything that I ever wanted. She's doing everything I ever wanted from somebody, to see me, to want me, and not to think about anybody else. It's a temporary feeling of safety. You've made me feel safe and feel seen. Yeah, I'm not about to ruin this. But the reality is he wouldn't have ruined it because there were other people he needed to talk to. He's on Love Island. You're supposed to talk to other people. You're supposed to get to know other people. It's the rules of the game. But because both of them are afraid of being abandoned, they locked in early. They said no one else can get involved. And I hear it. I understand it. You know what I mean? I'm not mad at it. I'm just explaining something that was happening between the two of them. Okay, so let's listen a bit more to what he says as well. Okay.
You know, like, they came here to be famous. It's like they are on a TV show. That being said, like, yeah, like, do you feel like in any way you were kind of gaming the game or playing the game, or certainly any more than any of your peers?
No, because for me, as you can see in the episodes, I can't fake shit. So when I was really unhappy and I was really messed up, I couldn't just say, let's stay together. Because I could, like, I'll just say, like, the door recoupling. I know Iris isn't really my type, and I know she isn't really my type, but I still chose her. And that was like a roll of the dice. I could have just chose Huda and made that relationship work, but I can't fake shit. So no, I wasn't really gaming the system. I didn't even look at it like that. Because I feel like if I was, I would have some plan Bs and some plan Cs, but I just kind of dove into one girl. So I personally don't see it like that, but I can get it like, oh, he's just so focused. He must just be here to win. But as you can see, when I was unhappy, what I'm saying?
So like he said, he was actually all in, which is very important, right? So whilst he was all in, but by the time the pancake date happened, that is when emotional safety took precedence. See, for the first 8 days, he says, right, they were good. I'm going to play the clip soon. You're going to get there. He's good. He's all in. He's actually shown her he's loyal. So he's actually in. So it is a temporary feeling of safety because the reality of the relationship hasn't hit yet. Do you get what I'm saying to you? Her behavior hasn't been shown yet. Her chaos hasn't come yet. So for him, he's feeling temporarily safe. And so he's all in because he showed us that he's loyal. He showed us that he's going to be all about her. She done the exact same thing. They said they're not going to kiss nobody. They didn't get up in the challenge. The first day, he didn't get up. She didn't get up. Okay. They showed each other that, oh, I'm for you. Cool. It's not until the pancake situation, which he explains, that he now realizes, oh my gosh, I am now not actually emotionally safe because I now see the behavior for what it really is. The first 8 days was like a honeymoon period because she was on her best behavior. But after 8 days and the pancake situation happens, now she's showing the signs of her true self. And also he will show signs of his true self, right? So we're going to get there. I just want to just bring that in so you guys can feel that aspect as well. Okay. All right. Let's
like so toxic so fast. From your perspective, like how much of the show have you seen it all? Are you not seen any of it? Like
I've seen a couple episodes. I watched almost all of the one I left on, and then I watched I skimmed through most of them. So I've seen some of them.
So I guess, I mean, obviously when it comes to shows like this, even though there's an episode almost every night, there's a lot we don't get to see. So one, like from your perspective, when did things start getting a little rocky? And then two, we'd love any context of like important information that, you know, what didn't we get to see when, you know, when it comes to your and Huda's relationship in terms of like why things kind of took a turn the way they did?
That's a great question. Honestly, things were amazing up until the day, I call it the pancake day. We won't get into it right now, but the pancake.
Let's pause it right there. So just as he makes it very clear, it's the pancake day that changed. Okay. All right. It's the only day that changed for him was that pancake day. And we all know what happened on the pancake day. Okay. All right. We all know what happened on the pancake day. So that's really important. This is the focal point now. This is where things are going to change because things before this might happen, but he's like, I'm gonna move through it. Okay, I'm gonna go through it. I'm gonna do. That's cool, right? Even the mum situation, he moved through it. What changed is that he realized at this point, the pancake situation, he realized I'm not safe. Okay, I'm not safe.
Pancake day. Things were amazing until the pancake day. So we had like a week, I think, maybe 8 days of just like, it was fire. Like, yeah, there were some minor things, but like we had so much genuine, like just such a crazy genuine connection off the rip. And where things started going south was like, I told her who I was in a relationship. And then she kind of took that as who I need to be now. And I didn't nip that in the bud. So I take responsibility. Like I didn't sit her down and be like, yo, like that's not who I am. Instead, I said, you know what? You're right. Let me be Superman already. Cause it takes me a long time to get to like, you know, super boyfriend. And I was like, oh, in a relationship.
Now let's pause it here because this is actually this is a two-way situation. He is at fault here as well. This is where we need to start. Now we're going to start making our money. Okay. Now we're going to start making our money because now we're going to explain what's actually happening between him and Huda and why it went horribly wrong. Because oftentimes these relationships go wrong because people are not communicating what they actually need and what their expectations are. And that's where the warfare is. Okay. All right. So let's really let's home in on this one because this is where you're going to really start to see the issues are going to really come out on both sides and how they trigger each other because it's a cycle. You got two avoidants in a relationship, but one's got an anxious attachment. And I'm going to explain it in full so you understand what's going on. So let's break it down.
Such a crazy genuine connection off the rip. And where things started going south was like, I told her who I was in a relationship. And then she kind of took that as who I need to be now. And I didn't nip that in the bud. So I take.
Now pause it right here. What the hell did he just say? He says, you know what? I told her the things basically like the things that he does, you know, when he's that boyfriend. And she took it and ran with it, right? Now, here's what's happened. He's told her, listen, maybe I'm a person that is very loving. I'm very caring. You know, I do little things here. I do breakfast. I do, you know, I buy little gifts. I do all these little things, right? But he said those things from a future perspective because here's one thing. He said it that way because he knows himself, which is first and foremost, it takes him a long time to trust the person in front of him. And that's why I said that sex got involved way too early, that it fooled them both. Those little things that he's talking about require emotional connection to do so. Okay. Let me see. Can I? They don't. Okay. So I want to show you something, okay? Because in order for him to do those little things, this is why in relationships that women sometimes complain about certain men that they date. Usually they're talking about dismissive, avoidant men. Those dismissive men, they're not romantic. He's not romantic. He doesn't take me out on dates. Doesn't do all these things. The reason why is because it takes an emotional connection to do so. And what we call this is emotional connectivity. And in that space of emotional connectivity, you have to feel safe in order to do it. Let me just get up this for you so you can actually see this, right? This is something that I do with my clients a lot, right? To get them to understand what's happening. Because we need to be able to understand that in order for him to get to that space, he has to wait 8 to 6 months, 6 to 8 months. What he's really talking about is, I don't feel emotionally safe enough to do that yet. And that's really important, right? Now, that's not on Huda, that's on him. Okay, that's not on Huda. I want to just show you something real quick. Sorry, I just need to put my screen so you can actually see this as well. Okay, so here's my Word document. So here's one of my worksheets that I do with clients as well, right? I hope you guys can see this as well. This is something I do with my clients. So here's an emotional connectivity sheet that I do with my clients. It's something that I've made, okay? And it's called 12 Steps of Emotional Deep Intimacy. I stole this. I kind of stole it and remixed it. I can't lie to you. So let me not lie. I stole it from psychology.com. But I remixed it, okay? So there are 12 steps of emotional connection. Why is this important? Because until there is emotional safety, it is very difficult to now, for that man who's a dismissive avoidant, to start doing those little things, because those little things are from a space of safety and an emotional safe space. So here's what most people need, okay? To be their best self, number 7 underpins every single thing, okay? All right. Number 7 is called create judgment-free. Get off the screen. Number 7 is called create a judgment-free zone. Let me just bring this closer so you can see this, right? Number 7, create a judgment-free zone, right? And then looking at conflict as an opportunity for growth. But number 7 is the most important thing because it links to emotional safety. When there is a space for vulnerability without criticism or dismissal, or even without there being somebody who's going to hurt you, what that allows for you is to be able to be the best you. The real you, okay? So when his needs are being met, to be supported, to be encouraged, to be loved, to be appreciated, be acknowledged, to be affirmed, those things, right? Then what you end up doing is you end up becoming empowered. And it's so funny, he used the same words I use. That's how I know that what happened to him. I said to a young lady, I said to her, and shout out to her as well, she knows who she is. I said to her, something about you makes me feel like a Superman. I don't know what it is. Something about you, the way that you talk to me, the way you interact with me, you make me feel like I can conquer the whole entire world. And I had to, after we don't really stopped interacting, I had to ask myself the question, what does she do? Because there ain't no way I'm going to leave it just at this point. What does she do? And I realized what happened. What she did is she created a space where I was never judged. I was never criticized. I was never torn down. You know, if I did something, she always would say, I believe in you. I know you can do it. You know, like she spoke words and I realized what happened. Those are the words I was missing as a child. The emotional neglect that I suffered as a child. Oh, my parents, I think they're great, but there was some emotional neglect there. The lack of encouragement, the lack of support, the fact that you're firstborn and you have to go and penetrate the world by yourself. You have to learn things by yourself. You don't have a secure base to really be able to learn certain things from, right? I was lacking that. So I believe the same thing happened to Jeremiah. He's lacking that. So when then Huda, at the first 8 days, creates an environment of you're the best, I only can see you, you're wonderful, you're amazing, and speaking all these kind words of affirmations to him, acknowledging him, affirming him, this creates the Superman effect. It creates a Superman effect because the child in this is who he should be. That Superman feeling is actually how every man should feel about the woman that they're with. But when you're wounded, that's very difficult to feel like. In fact, you now feel like Lex Luthor. And then you end up becoming a villain in your relationship and tearing women down when you should really be feeling like you're Superman. So the first 8 days, you feel like Superman because remember, she's also wearing her mask. She's putting on her best performance for you. And when you're having sex, it's even more magnified. So now we're having sex, we're intimate, we're close. She's saying all these amazing things about me. She's beautiful, she's stunning. You know, we get along, it's electrifying. You know, we just seem to just click. We got a whole vibe. By the way, and I said this to my clients as well. A lot of people say this as well. We just had a connection. I don't know what it is. We had a connection. No. You didn't just have a connection. Something happened. Let me tell you what happened. First and foremost, attraction. Physical attraction happened. Number 2, You probably linked because you had similar hobbies and likes. That's what's a vibe, and that's the vibe, that's the connection, that's the chemistry you're talking about. The likes and the hobbies. Maybe they paid attention to small details at the very beginning. That's why the vibe was correct. Our vibe was correct, right? And you know, maybe for you, you could, your needs were being met. Your needs were being met. So it felt like a vibe. When you say we have chemistry as a vibe, I don't know how to explain it. I believe a lot of times it's because you've got the same likes, hobbies, you've had similar experiences, you see the world in a similar way, your perceptions are quite similar. So it feels like, ooh, right? We're slick. And so Jeremiah suffered in the exact same way, right? He suffered in the exact same way because the first 8 days, that's what it felt like. So when you create a space of just no judgment, when you create a space of safety, that man or that woman is empowered to be their best self. The problem that we have is that once that wears off, because you guys started so quickly because you were actually having sex, the real you shows up. It's what we call when stakes become too high, the real you shows up. When you're now afraid you could lose them, when you're afraid of abandonment, when you're afraid they could reject you, when you're afraid they could betray you, now we're going to have problems. But let me remove this and get back onto where I was, because we need to get back to where we were. Okay. All right. So let me get back to where we were. Okay. All right. Let's get back to Jeremiah. Yes. So someone said when a mask slips, when both of their masks slip as well. Okay. Here we go. Let's get back into this. Okay.
Get into right now, but the pancake day. Things were amazing until the pancake day. So we had like a week, I think, maybe 8 days of just like, it was fire. Like, yeah, there were some minor things, but like, we had so much genuine, like just such a crazy genuine connection off the rip. And where things started going south was like, I told her who I was in a relationship, and then she kind of took that as who I need to be now. And I didn't nip that in the bud. So I take responsibility. Like I didn't sit her down.
Now let's pause it right here too, because something happened. When he says, I told her who I was talking about the future, and she started, he's actually not talking about the future. Let me tell you what happened. He says he's talking about the future. He's not talking about the future. He's talking about right now. I know he says a future, and I believe every word he says, but he's let me tell you what happened. He said, you know what? I can be loving, I can be caring, I can do this, I can do that, I can plan dates, I can do all of this stuff for you. What happened also is that when she expected it, it no longer became easy to do. Oh, let's talk about this. Okay, let's talk about this. When he said that's who he was and said, I do all of these things, he wasn't lying. He does do these things. It just takes a bit of a while for him to get there. Huda, though, said, okay, fantastic. And then now she's expecting it, because one thing you don't know about fearful avoidant is this: what you say, you better freaking do. That's the thing about fearful avoidance. You can't play with them. If you said that you're going to do these things, you need to do it. Because for a fearful avoidant, your words for them are your actions, and your actions are your words. In the sense of what they mean is that if you say this, they hold you to it. Because for them, if you don't, it feels like you're about to betray them, reject them, or abandon them. Because they've also seen with their parents how their words do not match their actions. So the parent might say, I love you, but the actions are showing that they hate them. Oh, I love you, daughter. I love you, son. But then the parent will be controlling. The parent will be abusive, manipulative, critical. So whenever they would hear words and see a difference in behavior, that's where there's going to be a difference. So he can get there. But the moment that, listen to what he said, when she expected it, and here's the problem. The moment she expected it, his triggers and his wounds kicked up. What's the wound of a dismissive avoidant person? Disappointment. Because you see, for dismissive avoidant people, their biggest issue is that they were always disappointed by their parents. The parent would fail on promises. The parent would not come through. The parent would not emotionally support them or emotionally, encourage them. So they were always met with disappointment. They always believe somebody's going to disappointment. This is what happened to Olandria. Olandria says how, she's got to be strong and no one else, and, because no one else will be there for her. Yeah, that sounds like somebody who's been disappointed by other people and can't rely on them anymore. And so you become hyper independent. So here's what happens. Once you say, I'm going to do something, and the person says, I now expect it, you now fear, because now there's an expectations, and expectations, if you don't meet it, can lead to disappointment. Whose disappointment? Their disappointment. And if they're disappointed, what does that lead to? Rejection. Let me break down the equation again in case you missed it. Let me break it down again. It's an equation. Okay. Here's the equation. He says, this is what I can do. She says, fantastic. I'm now expecting that from you. For instance, I'm making pancakes. I can make pancakes in the morning. I'm now expecting you to make pancakes. What he actually hears is obligation. When I hear obligation, I'm actually hearing I've got no choice now. I want to make it clear for you. When he says I can do these things, he wants to do it on his merit and his time. The moment he tells her, she goes, okay, but I now expect that you're going to do that. She now makes it, and she now says it. And what he hears is she's now making it an obligation. And in that obligation, he now feels, yes, as Elsa said, he now feels like he's trapped. And I'm going to be stuck here having to do this all the time. What if there's a day that I can't do it? What if there's a day that I'm sick? What if there's a day that I'm tired? And what he doesn't realize is he doesn't have the assertiveness then to be able to say, it's okay, down the line, I may feel sick and I can just tell her I'm feeling sick. But what he's afraid of is if I do change my mind, all I'm going to be left with is the person's going to reject me. Because that's what I actually experienced as a child. So now when he says, oh, this is how I feel about it, she's like, this expectation, it feels like obligation. He now feels trapped. What he's done is that he's made a mental note. And what he's going to do is, I'm not going to communicate that with you, but I will take my space. Because a lot of dismissive avoidant people struggle with co-regulation. Okay? Okay? A lot of people struggle with co-regulation. Okay? And being able to regulate with other people, meaning share your emotions and regulate each other so you can become calm and still. Dismissive avoidant people don't tend to do that because they never were allowed to do that as kids. They weren't allowed to share their emotions and be like, this is how I feel. And then the parent be like, oh, I didn't know you felt like that. Okay, let's talk about it. They never experienced that. So guess what? They're not going to tell you how they feel. What they're going to do is become passive aggressive and take what they need from the situation, which is where the selfishness comes in, but they're not seeing it that way. They're seeing it as, this is how I felt. And I didn't know how else to go about it. That's why I'm saying it's very important to explain that part, because it's a key part.
Such a crazy general connection off the rip. And where things started going south was like, I told her who I was in a relationship, and then she kind of took that as who I need to be now. And I didn't nip that in the bud. So I take responsibility. Like I didn't sit her down and be like, yo, like that's not who I am. Instead, I said, you know what? You're right. Let me be Superman already. Cause it takes me a long time to get to like, super boyfriend. And I was like, oh, in a relationship, I do this. And she took that and was like, okay, that's who you are now. And I'm like,
well, can you clarify?
So as you just said there, right? Okay. So as you just said, for him, he said, obviously, look, he takes accountability for that. So shout out to him. But what he's noticed is that obviously once he told her, she accepted it now. And, he then obviously then goes on to say like, that really and truly that expectation, he can become that. He can become the super boyfriend. It's funny. He's just been a boyfriend. He doesn't realize he's just been a boyfriend. There's nothing super about it. He's just becoming a boyfriend. But notice how he puts super in front of it. The reason being is because that is the for him, that is the better version of Jeremiah. That's the Jeremiah 2.0. When Jeremiah feels emotionally safe and he feels that this person is locked in and he's locked in and they actually are for each other. Oh yeah, Jeremiah's just Jeremiah 2.0. When he doesn't realize that is Jeremiah. The Jeremiah that he's operating at is a Jeremiah who's at a minus. And a lot of us with insecure attachments are actually at the below standard of our actual self. That would be Jeremiah if he was secure. If Jeremiah was secure and not afraid of rejection, that would be the normal Jeremiah. There wouldn't be super Jeremiah. It would just be Jeremiah. But because, again, he knows the difference between him being able to perform at that level versus what level he's at right now, he makes a distinction between the two. And all that's happening is that he's just not emotionally safe. And that's not necessarily on Huda all the time. That's on him too. The fear of being trapped and overtaken.
Clarify what do you mean by that in terms of like what you actually said to her in terms of
Yeah. So I was just like, I do the little things. I do the flower. I just told her how I was in my last relationship. Like, the flowers, the restaurant, like anything like what a boyfriend does, like the cute things. I said I do all that. And then she was like, okay, bet. And then like the day after, she's like, why are you doing any of that? And I was like, wait, that's why I'm in a relationship. But I didn't say that. I said, oh, you're right. Let me go try to do that.
And so when he says, obviously, he tried to live up to that particular perspective, what he did is that he wanted to avoid the conflict and the conversation. Because what should have come out of his mouth next should have been, hey, you know what? Huda, can I be honest with you? I haven't got to that stage just yet, you know, and I am a little, and here's the truth. Here's what he should really, here's the truth, what he should say. I can't lie. I'm afraid of making a mistake. I'm afraid of letting you down and you feeling disappointed, because when you feel disappointed, I'm going to feel rejected, and then I'm going to move away because I find it difficult to feel negative emotions. That's the truth. The truth is that I want to be able to do those things, but I'm afraid that I will let you down. Now I like you, you like me. I'm afraid I will let you down. I'm afraid, you know, I'm afraid that by doing that, you know, you'll be disappointed or you'll be hurt. And if that's the case, then I'll feel responsible for hurting you. And I don't want that to be the case. You know, I don't feel like I'm not a bad person, but now I'm going to start feeling like a bad person. So I you know, I want to get us there slowly. I want to, it's not that. You just need to be honest. And a lot of people lack honesty. Jeremiah's not the only one. A lot of you lack honesty. I lack honesty a lot of times about how you really feel. And so a lot of times when I'm coaching clients, this is what I actually have to push them to be honest about how they really feel. Because a lot of you have developed, including myself, have developed what we call PC answers. You don't tell your partner how you really feel. You tell them a PC answer. And actually that doesn't solve the issue. It doesn't solve your relationship. It doesn't solve where you need to be in that relationship. It actually hampers and harms your relationship because you're afraid of what their reaction might be, or they might leave you, or they might say something back to you, right? So this is really important.
So I think I tried to be Superman instead of let her know, like, that's not who I am. That takes me months to get there, you know, like, that's not who I am in like 3 days into the villa.
Yeah.
And that's where the expectations just didn't get set right. And then the intimacy got way too much. And I didn't say like, yo, I'm not comfortable with this. I just tried to be Superman. And that's where it really got toxic.
So,
and so as you just heard him there, instead of actually stating his expectations, he allowed her expectations to guide him. That's the problem. The fear of being able to state what he wanted and what he wants to do is what caused this issue to happen, because he didn't state the expectations of what he wanted and what he needed from her. To say, hey, can we, you know, let's slow it down. Why? Because sex was happening. Sexual activity was happening. And so it's like, again, that sped up the process far more quicker and took it out. It felt like he took it out of his hands. Right? And so the fear of making it worse, the fear of it becoming more conflict, the fear of it turning into something, then stops him from actually speaking out and saying the truth. Okay? Very, very important as well. Now that's going to trigger the crash outs by Huda. I'm not making Huda innocent, because some of the crash outs are beyond normality, right? But that's going to cause a crash out. The crash out in the sense of what does that mean? Withdrawal or being hot and cold. The crash outs that Huda's doing, they're actually abusive. They're going above that. But you will get some crash outs where she's hot and she's cold, or she feels like she's scared. So the reaction will be a fearful reaction. And it can be what we call a fearful avoidant lash out. What we were seeing with Huda is what we call fearful avoidant lash outs, which can end up becoming abusive. Because when you are screaming, shouting, calling people out of their name, this now begins to go over the line of what we call verbal and emotional abuse. Now, the lash outs by the fearful avoidant are a way of, the lash out is that they're afraid that you're about to abandon them, or you're about to reject them, or you're about to betray them. So this is the only way they know how to do it. So they lash out in the hopes that you'll be able to stay, because like what they've seen in their relationships in their childhood is that chaos is what created connectivity. If there was no chaos, there was no connectivity. If there was no harm, there was no connectivity. But the problem that happens is once they do the harm, they start feeling bad because they were emotionally aroused when they did it. And now they've calmed down. They're like, damn, have I gone too far? Like, have I done something really bad here? And they start feeling bad. And so, but then again, they're met with shame, they're met with guilt, they're met with embarrassment. And then that becomes a cycle in itself, that they feel the shame and this guilt and embarrassment for harming the other person. But because they feel that guilt, shame, and embarrassment, they struggle now to come and like be honest about like, hey, I'm struggling. I'm afraid. The lack of honesty is that the truth of the matter is that what Huda Show said was, when you don't do what you said you were going to do, or when I feel like we don't do what you said you're going to do, I start feeling like I'm going to be betrayed, or I'm going to be abandoned, or you're going to reject me. And that's how I really feel. And so when I had that, I have very bad responses to that. And I'm not able to communicate in that moment. So I crash out. That's the truth. Right. But again, the crash outs create the cycle, because when she crashes out, he feels emotionally unsafe. When he and then he doesn't show up all the way.
Obviously, Love Island has this unique, its own lingo. It obviously has its own.
Oh, right. That's my note. Sorry.
Then all of a sudden you're making out with your friends during the challenges and things like that. Two-part question. Like, what conversations did the entire group, if any, have about like how this shit all works, you know, in terms of like expectations, or like what were expectations of the group, but more specifically you and right away?
Yeah, I mean, well, within the group first, like, they've like for 2 weeks told me do this, do that, do this, do that, and I'm kind of like my own person. Like, I love to just do it. I can't fake nothing, so I can't like go pull a random girl for a chat because they tell me to. I was like, all right, for sure. So for 2 weeks, I was kind of like battling the guys. Like, no, I'm good. Like, I want to explore this. Like, I'm good. And then at the same time, you know, I'm hearing like me and her get into it, but our expectations were just like the baseball challenge was the first challenge I think that really like she didn't like how I had to kiss a girl or I got to kiss a Maya, but at the same time, I would do little things to try to make it not that bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? So there was a lot of pressure. Like, okay, let me do the challenge this way so I don't get yelled at later. Let me do the challenge this way so I don't get in trouble. And then we got to a point where it's just like before the lumberjack challenge, we're like, you know what,
now that's really important what you just said here. Yeah. Very good point, Lisa, as well. It's very true. Yes, they do lash out for reassurance. What he just said there, he now became afraid. He now became afraid of Huda's reactions. So now he's going to go into what we call performance-based behavior. He's going to do whatever he can do to not elicit that negative response. And the reason being is his tolerance for discomfort is not much. Although he tolerated and didn't say anything, it may seem like he's tolerating discomfort. Yes, in some aspect, but the aspect is that you can't tolerate discomfort, and then you can't also admit that you're in discomfort. And that lack of being able to speak it out keeps you in a prison. And then what ends up happening is when she's acting out and screaming and shouting about the fact you're going to kiss another girl, what you're going to do, you're going to end up doing passive aggressive behaviors. Meaning, for instance, instead of telling her, I want to enjoy the challenge and I want to kiss people, please don't, I don't want to have an argument and a fight over it. How can I reassure you? Instead, what he's going to do, okay, is that he's going to end up kissing someone anyway, because that's a challenge, right? Eventually he's going to break the ranks and he's just going to do it anyway, because now he's like, I wanted to do this and I couldn't do it. I felt restricted and I've got to break free from that. But he doesn't realize he hasn't communicated that appropriately with the party. Now the other party also too is crashing out, and they are making it a very scared place to be. Remember I told you about the arena of a safe environment requires us to be able to have a judgment-free zone. When you crash out, it becomes a judgment zone. You know? Okay.
Just gonna enjoy the challenges fully, and whatever happens, happens. Like we're gonna, we're still like, not locked in, but we're still really close. But we have that freedom now to enjoy the challenges.
Okay. And how did you guys come to that decision to change up?
It was kind of just like, we're here to play the game. I forgot what happened. Oh, she got really mad.
You didn't, can I be honest with you? He did not forget how it happened. He does not forget how it happened. He just, I believe he did. I don't think he forgot. I think what happened here in reality is that they had a conversation or very lightly, and then he was like, he made a decision. I'm going to kiss somebody in a challenge. How you forget? You didn't forget. You didn't forget how it happened. The way they quickly moved on, like, no, you didn't forget. What happened was you probably mentioned it. It skimmed over. Didn't get a response that you wanted, and you decided I've had enough of having to cartel and to curb my thoughts and feelings and behaviors to the whim of your crash outs. So I'm just going to take it. I'm going to do it. That's why you can't remember, right?
At me kissing Amaya at the goddamn baseball challenge, and I was just like, yeah, like I'm not gonna go through this the rest of the show. Like we gotta the challenges are for the challenges. I want to participate. I don't want to be the guy. Like I gotta be myself. I can't just go into a challenge, just hide and do the cheek kissing the rest of the show. Like I gotta go be myself and show people like who I am. I'm a fun guy. So it was just like that. It was like we both gotta participate and like be here to be here.
That's crazy.
So what needed to really happen was a really big conversation. Okay, all right. What needed to happen was a big conversation. What he needs to say was this, Huda, I want to be honest with you. I want to participate in these challenges, okay? But I want to be very, very clear. Though we are, I know we're not fully closed off, and I want you to understand that I'm still here with you. These challenges are not going to take me away from you. I just want to be able to participate so I can show my freedom of range of expression, and so I can be fully me. I feel like I'm restricted when you are crashing out if a girl even looks at me. Okay, right? So I want to feel safe, and the way that I feel safe is being able to communicate with you, let you know, okay, about how I feel and what's going on in my mind. I also want to be able to reassure you that I'm not going nowhere. I'm not about to abandon you. I'm not about to betray you. I'm not about to reject you. These are just challenges that I want to be able to engage in, because this is what we came to this island for. We came to engage in these behaviors, right? So I want to reassure you. And if you need more reassurance, let me know. I will reassure you. If you need reassurance after the challenges, I will do that for you. But I want to let you know, I don't want to be stopped trying to be a participant of the challenges, because it makes me feel like I'm not being able to connect in the villa with everybody the same way that everyone's connecting. And I feel like we're restricting our actual experience on this show. Now, we have to be able to explain that. That takes a little bit of time to do. It's difficult to be able to say, right? It's difficult to be able to say those things because, again, we're afraid of the person's reaction. But that's a conversation that needs to happen between the two of them. That there are both fears on both sides. Like, you know, me going into this in an aspect. And yeah, he did try a little bit. And that's where he needed to also, and I've been here. So I know I've been in Jeremiah's position. I've been there where the person is overly jealous. They start accusing you, doing all of that, right? That's also important. Whilst you may feel like it's too much work, you have to do that for a happy relationship. You have to do that for a normal relationship anyway. Like, I know a lot of us say these things, but the reality is you have to communicate in a healthy relationship anyway. You ain't got a choice. You know what I'm saying to you? So the person might not crash out, but you still have to communicate. So you can't get away with it. You have to somehow do the work, because if you're somebody who's got an insecure attachment, if you get somebody who's secure, their security will cause you to feel more insecure because you're not there yet. So that work has to be done by everybody, including Jeremiah. So he really did need to be able to also institute boundaries. When she was shouting and yelling, did you notice that in one of the arguments, she said, Jeremiah, stand up for yourself. Stand up for yourself. Now, the reason why, okay, all right. The reason why she said that is because also fearful avoidants I believe fearful avoidants are very self-aware, okay, all right. But what she was looking for, and this is not right because the way she went about it, what she was looking for was for Jeremiah to stand up to her. I keep telling y'all, women don't like men that don't stand up to them. I'm gonna be honest with you. Women do not like men that don't stand up to them, because Huda knew her behavior was off limits. And what she was trying to do was that she was trying to encourage Jeremiah to stand up to her so that she could actually have a boundary. So she knew how far to go. Because she would, and this is something that is so interesting to see it happen. Without that boundary, she's actually more fearful. And actually she becomes even more wilder. Right? So she was looking for that boundary and never got one, so she went past it. I always say this. Yes, exactly, Elsid. She wanted it for her because she can't put it on herself. She's not a boundary person herself, because fearful avoidants, a lot of them don't have a voice and they don't have very good boundaries because they never were allowed to have boundaries. So actually they use you as a proxy for their boundaries. And so what you realize is that, I've said this before, if you've ever crossed a bridge over water, imagine that bridge no longer had boundaries. How would you walk over that bridge? Right? And so that's what she was looking for in a relationship with Jeremiah. She wanted him to put the boundaries on because she didn't have boundaries herself. So it's like, if Jeremiah says, this is as far as we can go, don't go any further than this, right? I'm not going to take that anymore. And if you keep going, listen, we're not going to be together anymore. I'm being deadly serious. If you really let her know the boundary, she has two choices. Either she got to be out, or she'll fix up. You know what I'm saying to you, right? And so at a point in time, you have to let them know that, listen, here's my boundary, but here's a consequence. If you keep going, I can't be with you. And if you want to keep pushing this boundary, I'm going to let you know, listen, that can't work for me. That's why I said that the work has to be done, regardless of whether you are somebody who's a Huda or not. if you don't learn how to effectively, healthily communicate, it doesn't matter if it's Huda or not. You still got to deal with that in another relationship. If you can't boundary set with Huda, you're not going to boundary set with somebody who's more secure. You know what I'm saying to you? So you have to learn these lessons ahead of time. I'm not putting the blame on Jeremiah. I'm saying this is an area that he can work on so that this doesn't happen again. I say the same thing about women when they go into relationships and develop a pattern of dealing with men a certain way. And I talk about the men too. You need to develop boundaries because Jeremiah also has weak boundaries. He's a people pleaser. He's told us this already. He is a people pleaser, meaning he doesn't want to hurt your feelings. And by doing so, he causes resentment to build up in himself. And then he causes passive aggressive movements and behaviors that re-trigger the person in the relationship as well. He has to do that so that he can have better relationships, and also so that he can spot people that are not healthy. If you've got better boundaries, you can spot people that don't have good boundaries, and you leave them alone.
Heard or understand how things were shown. Do you feel like ultimately the show captured the dynamic of your guys' relationship?
Respectfully, from what I've seen, yes. I still have a lot. I still care for her very deeply, but there was a lot of instances where we were just talking and she would, crash out. And I have nothing but respect for her still. But it's just like, yeah, it was pretty accurate. Because there's some moments where I'm watching myself and I'm just like, bro, get up, like, don't take that. But when you're on like no sleep, it's hard to like know if you're in the right or the wrong. So I feel like that's why it took so long in my conversations to see like, okay, am I in the right here? Am I in the wrong here? So that's why like you'll see me take a day or two to have extra conversations with her just to make sure I was, I like to see things through to the end. So I wasn't just going to give up on the first fight. So, but it was accurate.
And I think that's also very important what you said, right? That he takes a day or two, which is also good because sometimes you need to process. Because here's another thing that's difficult for dismissive avoidance. They struggle to process. Okay? They struggle to process. And so what you don't realize is that it's going to take him a day or two because when it's happening in that moment, he hasn't practiced putting boundaries in those kind of environments. It's not a normal thing for him. So what ends up happening is it takes a day or two for that to be processed before he comes back and says, I don't like this happening. Right? And so it's a case of, again, working on those boundaries. Okay, so that's an important thing. Yes, he had a better relationship with Andrena, but I can guarantee this, it will still happen. It's not going to change. Like, I promise you, his behavior is consistent. He will not crash out. He didn't crash out here. What he did show is, though, he will be also an avoidant in that relationship too. Why? Because it doesn't matter how healthy the other person is. It's about you. So Andrena might, and he might not crash out the way the Huda does, but if you've got dismissive avoidant tendencies, you show up that same way. You show up the same way in another relationship. So you might not be the bad person per se, but you might just you might show your true essence of self of dismissiveness maybe 6 months into a relationship, right? So that's what I'm saying to you. That he definitely showed a different side of himself in Andrena relationship, but he would have shown that side of him anyway. Would have definitely shown it as well. Yeah,
watching you again, I'm a fan. I'm, obviously, so maybe I'm biased, but like I saw someone who, it makes sense that you're in therapy. You seem like you're an introspective person, right?
Moving too fast and the expectations were too high. Instead of communicating that was too much for me, I did the opposite and said, I like you so much. I'll try to be that person I'm not ready to be yet. So that makes sense. Like I dead ass didn't communicate my feelings. So they're right in that regard. At the same time, it is hard because when you're on no sleep, it's like, okay, I don't want to like look like an asshole. I don't want to do the wrong thing. So it's like you do try to be more patient with everybody else and put other people first, because you don't like, it's hard to have a clear mind. Like, okay, am I tripping? Is she tripping? So that's why I feel like I was extra.
And that's the biggest issue with sometimes dismissive avoidance, is that they're not thinking about themselves. You're projecting and thinking about them and what they think about you, rather than thinking about what you actually feel. And that's what ends up happening. Yeah, that's actually what ends up happening. So when you see Jeremiah, okay, all right, when you see Jeremiah, thinking, okay, like, about the, not thinking about his feelings. Well, that's actually why you're not going to be able to really resolve the real issue. Because when you are in a relationship, you have to think about how you feel. I'm not saying you don't think about how they feel. I'm saying you must begin to process how do you feel, so that you can learn how to be able to communicate that to the other person. Whether you're right or you're wrong, it doesn't make a difference. Process how you feel, right? And communicate that, so the other person knows where you're coming from, because we are building a baseline for each other and how and why we do what we do. So if he's able to process how he feels, he starts thinking about, when you're a people pleaser, you're thinking about them. and not yourself. And that makes a relationship more lopsided and more one-sided. How do I know? Because he told us that Huda never really asked questions about him. Well, why didn't you ask her to tell you? Why didn't you say to her, listen, babe, ask more questions? Instead, he was slinking away.
You're patient and kind of like not went above and beyond, but I was like, okay, let me really hear her out for hours and hours to make sure, you know, I'm like seeing who she is as a person. So yeah, but no, I definitely didn't communicate. This is way too fast for me. Let's slow down because I liked her so much. I can own that. Like that was my main mistake, was not like telling her like, let's slow down.
No, I appreciate that answer. Huda revealing that she's a mom was obviously a main storyline and a big moment, not only for the show, but opened up about her being a mom.
Honestly, it's hard to say because I have no idea what that is like in her shoes. And I don't remember how soon she told me, but honestly, I wasn't mad at her for not telling me yet, because I feel like I get it. Like you don't want to come in here and say, it's two sides. Like you don't want to come in here and say you have a mom because everyone's going to think of you as that. At the same time, like you want a chance to be yourself and not, but at the same time, you do have the kid. So like I see both sides of the coin, but I wasn't mad. I was just really caught off guard. Like I wasn't like mad that she like hit it for a couple of days, but I was like, I did get to know her, and at that point we were good. So I was kind of just like, oh shit, okay. Like it wasn't like,
okay. No. Normally my wife is in these interviews. She's traveling right now. She had a lot, you know, we're new parents.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. You know, it was like, I'm a mom.
Yeah.
As if it was like, in a way, when you're saying, when she opened up to you, it was almost like, hey, I'm a mom. I don't want you to think of me any differently, or certainly like not be, you know, any less attracted to me. Understanding like, hey, as a mom, there's certain different responsibilities, you know, like it's not the same as like dating a 20-some-year-old like without a kid. But it almost seemed like the way she communicated it is if she expected like preferential treatment in a way, as opposed to like, you know, when Nally says, she like talks about our daughter, it's like, I have a daughter. It's always like my daughter, like, you know, my daughter does this, and then Huda was like, I'm a mom. It's like, did you see it that way? Or like after hearing, you know, again, like I got no notes. I'm communicating, you know, from my wife, but like, does that make sense? And were there other people in the villa that maybe like didn't quite understanding how Huda was, you know, communicating being a mom?
Yeah, I totally see what you mean now, because I watched the episode the other day and it was like, she's just like me. She likes what I like. She's da-da-da-da. And it was like, so not to bash on her, but like it was a lot of self-centeredness now that you mentioned that, which makes a lot of sense. Because my sister's had a baby and it's all about the baby. Like she was a mom, but then it's all about the baby. So yeah, now that you say that, it was definitely like a lot of, I'm a mom. The dog's just like me. I do this for her. I do that for her. I do this. So it's like, yeah, I kind of noticed that in conversation with her, which is why I kind of like started to move, because she didn't really ask me questions about myself. That's a different topic. But yeah, I see what you're saying now.
Now you see what he said? Do you listen to what he said there? He said, listen, she didn't really ask questions about me, which is why I also started to move. But was he having that conversation with her? I'm not blaming it, but again, I'm not putting the burden of blame on him. By the way, Huda is still the abuser in the situation. But what I'm saying to you is there are things that you can learn so you don't end up in situations like this with people like Huda. And there's things that Huda can learn so she doesn't end up in a situation doing what she did, right? And so for him in the space, he, instead of actually, again, asserting himself and communicating that, hey, you're not asking me questions about myself. I feel like, you know, I want you to ask more questions. I want you to be more engaged about me. I want you to be able to know more about me, because I want to be able to connect with you. Okay, right? So as he says, you know, she didn't really ask those questions, and so he needs to communicate that instead of just going, I'm just going to disappear. You know what I mean? And that's the passiveness that comes through when you're dismissive avoidant. You tend to kind of like assume people kind of know. One of the things, the biggest thing about dismissive avoidance is like they should know. They should know. You know what I mean? Like if I'm asking questions about you, isn't it not natural for you just to ask questions about me? And so there's this affinity with avoidance that is like, you should know. How the hell are we supposed to know? Right? Because what they don't realize is that they're being hypervigilant and they're paying extreme attention, and they believe that other people should be doing the exact same thing.
No, that definitely is true.
You've got some criticism from people who wanted you to like ask more questions about her child. Did you ask more questions and we just didn't get to see it? Or do you feel like maybe you could have handled it a little bit better now that you reflect on how that situation went down?
Honestly, most of the time we did talk about her, but I remember we talked a lot about her daughter at the date, and then we talked a lot about her daughter on the pink couch conversation. We had a pink couch conversation for like an hour before Ariana got there, and we talked about her daughter for like 30-45 minutes, like right after. And then after that, she went south, so we didn't get to talk about it. But yeah, we had at least 2 or 3 conversations talking about her daughter.
I thought it was like kind of, I mean, again, it's, you know, it's her story, so I get that she had certain ways of wanting to handle it, but like the way it was like, okay, I'm gonna tell Jeremy, but like, what was that like for you?
It was interesting at first, because at first I'm just like, I have no idea what that's like. So I kind of just removed my judgment and was like, okay, let's see how this goes. So then she told the girls, and then I found out, and then I had to wait a couple of days to talk to Nick about it. So yeah, it was interesting, but I guess I see the fact that she just didn't want to be known as the mom at first and wanted everyone to see her for her. So I totally get that side of things. But it was like curious for me navigating that because I couldn't say stuff to certain people about it. But I mean, that comes with it.
Okay. When America voted and recoupled you with Iris, what was that moment like? Because at that point, like, were you guys, there was cracks in your relationship from your perspective at that point?
Yeah, definitely none that I've really it was the same thing. I didn't vocalize, like, these expectations are way too high for me. Like, we're not dating. Like, I was basically in a relationship when we weren't dating. And I didn't say anything about that because I liked her. And I was like, okay, let's just keep going. And
again, like I said, not voicing your actual opinion, your actual thoughts, not your actual truth, and then kind of going along with it, but at the same time, feeling resentment at the same time, right? And that resentment then pushes you to a place where you have to leave the person. It's just real. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying to you? Again, it doesn't give Huda an excuse. I'm explaining it so that you can also learn yourself. If you're somebody who also is a dismissive avoidant, where you don't do well with emotions, you don't do well with emotional connections, and you're like, oh, I just like them, but you're not actually able to communicate how you feel and what you want and what you need. This is a great example of what this can lead you to. It leads you to people who are also so much so can do mind reading and who are hyper vigilant, because they do meet your needs at the very beginning, but after a while it becomes tiring mind reading and trying to understand what you want without saying it, right? And then you feel like they're missing the mark, and so actually you start to fade away. You don't need to be doing that.
Yeah, so once America did that, at first I was pissed because I felt me and the Huda just had a really long talk at the fire pit about just how we're going to move forward, and then we got recoupled, and then I was like, as you can see, I'm just like, I was so caught off guard because I was like, okay. And once Jenna and Pepe went for the recoupling, okay, oh, I'm good. And then once America did that, I'm like, okay, they're seeing the shit I'm feeling, but I'm not vocalizing. But I don't want to be like, I don't want my ego to take over and be like, Huda's a problem. Yeah, America's like got my back. So I had to like slowly try to pull out what America saw and make sure I wasn't just being like da 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 da. So yeah, once I seen that and I had the emotions I felt when it was Charlie or Huda leaving, I was like, okay, yeah, like there's something amiss here that I need to communicate more for sure.
That night, something I definitely have to give you shit for, and I didn't understand why you couldn't do that, but like,
yeah,
it seemed like a weak moment for you,
yeah, 100%.
To not pull Huda and like check in with her, and you were just like, I just want to go to my pillow or my bed or whatever. Yeah, what do you got to say?
Now I want to be very fair to him. Now this is why I'm going to defend Jeremiah on this situation. Okay, I know why he couldn't show up for her, because he was shut down. Okay, Jeremiah was shut down. And it's interesting because if you don't see Jeremiah as a victim, what you don't realize is that in that space, you think to yourself that he did it on purpose to try and like he was so selfish. He wasn't. The problem is twofold. Number one, because he wasn't actually communicating his needs and he was self-abandoning, right? And he was building up resentment. When that situation happened, he's exhausted emotionally, has nothing left to give in that moment. He shuts down because he's overwhelmed and can't process the amount of emotions, right? So now he has to go and he has to go insular, which is to go isolated by himself into his cave to go and recharge, to get himself ready to come and deal with her shenanigans. Now, that is something he has to work on, but I totally understand it. It wasn't even crazy to me. Okay, it wasn't even crazy to me that he did that. The fact that Nick tried to use that as a sanctimonious white knight moment, absolute bastardry. You know what I'm saying, Chu? I just thought it was bastardry by Nick. I was like, Nick, you are not the person to come and talk about I lost respect for you. I actually wanted to slap him through the screen. I was like, how dare you talk about respect when you are kissing two girls on the same night and you're gonna out here be a white knight? Get the frick out of here. And that's when I knew. That's when I realized you've got this level of enemies that he had in there is I think is the worst I've ever seen on Love Island. Like the kind of backstabbing that was happening by Ace and Nick was disgusting kind of level behavior. But anyway, I digress. I knew that he shut down. I could see it. I could understand. He shut down that moment. And what he needed to do was communicate, right? Instead of pushing her away, and said, hey, I need a minute. Give me an hour or two. Let me just recuperate. Let me just think about things. Okay. And then I'm gonna come and talk to you. But because he didn't communicate that, he pushed her away without communicating. And that's gonna create insecurity in your partner when you do that. Okay. And so now he now takes the space. And that's what actually happened to him. He was overwhelmed. So when he comes the next day to talk about it, I understand. So yeah, it's real.
Say about that.
No, that was by far a weak moment. I was very I guess, disappointed.
Like, it wasn't even that big of a moment. I can't lie to you. Like, everyone's talking about how big of a moment it was. It wasn't that big of a moment. We made it into a massive moment that he couldn't console her. He consoled her after. Right? He's consoled her after. Like, it wasn't that big. Like, they're acting like it was a huge moment of a morality issue. And I said, wait, what the hell? Like, is it that big of a deal? You didn't go and console her after. It's a massive thing. Brother, it wasn't that big of a deal. I can't lie to you. It's not like he cheated. It's not like he went with another girl. It's not like he, you know what I'm saying to you? Like, they made it into the most massivest thing. And I was like, why are they making it so massive? It wasn't that big of a deal.
With how I responded to things, but I just know being there, I just shut down. And I don't really have an excuse, whether it's to sleep or whatever I was going through, but I just shut down. I told her that and I apologized like 2 hours about it. But yeah, no, I definitely just shut down. It was definitely one of my weaker moments. I wish I could have been there for her, but I wasn't. And I just have to own that. Like, I shut down and I wasn't.
No,
and the reason why he couldn't be there for her is because he wasn't there for himself. And that's a problem. That's why you have to communicate. That's why he has to, that's why I'm saying to you, you have to communicate, because if you're not there for yourself, you are going to eventually not be there for others. So be there for you first. You know me?
Listen, I get it. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses for you, but I think one thing that people don't see on that show is the emotional and mental fatigue that all of you are dealing with 24/7. You got no support system. Like, yeah, you get avocado toast, but I'm sure it's just, you just do not have the comforts.
3 hours about like,
about
just like,
what?
Just like, I apologize. She basically was like, for the first 2 hours, actually for all of it, it was like 2 or 3 hours, honestly, like maybe even 4. But it was just like me apologizing for not showing up. How can we the next day? I think in the speakeasy for like 2 to 3 hours about like
About
just like,
what?
just like, I apologize. She basically was like, for the first 2 hours, actually for all of it, it was like 2 or 3 hours, honestly, like maybe even 4. But it was just like me apologizing for not showing up. How can we move forward? And then her just saying she's hurt the whole time. Like, there was no, because I'm a conflict. One, I'm gonna apologize, validate your feelings, and then I want to conflict resolute, or at least start working towards that. But really, the conversation in the speakeasy was just about just how she felt. And
to that point, I hear.
So really interesting that he said something. He said, you know, that he was apologizing for 2-3 hours and trying to have a conversation with her. And we actually witnessed that. We saw that with Huda, that she can't let it go. And the reason why Huda can't let it go is because she feels she's owed more than just an apology. And the reason being is actually she's trying. It almost becomes like she's punishing you. But in reality, you know, in that aspect, is the reason why is because she has to get to a place where she feels safe. She has to get to a place where she feels safe within herself, right? And probably because the underlying fear underneath it all is that the thing wasn't actually met. So let me give you an example of this, okay? What there was something that wasn't met for Huda. So let's say he's apologizing and he's saying he's sorry, okay? All right. The actual thing is that the need wasn't met. What's the need? The reassurance. So I'm not blaming him, by the way. I'm just saying as why she crashed out again. The reassurance that's needed is that, hey, look, I hear you, I see you, I validate your feelings, which he said he did. And then the other aspect also is that there needs to be an addressal of the core wound, which is either betrayal, there is rejection, or abandonment. So one of those 3 things are coming up, and she's not being honest about the fact that even though he says sorry, what she's really feeling is that she feels that either he's going to abandon her, reject her, or he's going to betray her. So when she has those feelings, she has to keep punishing him as a way of telling him that you can't leave me, instead of actually being honest about how she feels, which is, I can't lie, even though you're apologizing, what I do feel is that you're going to leave me. And I know that's something I need to work on. I know that's something that I need to get through. I know that's something that I need to be more secure in. But instead of doing that, she projects onto him. Okay? She projects onto him. No, him locking in would have not helped. Him locking it in would have still caused her to crash out. She's crashing out regardless of whether they're locking or not. It would have probably even made it worse. So in that moment, and also, like I said, because he's not putting boundaries in place, this is why she's going to feel unsafe. And again, I'm not blaming him to say that's the reason why she did what she did, but I'm saying to you, once, for instance, okay, Jeremiah keeps feeding her and he doesn't realize he's feeding her. So when he's apologizing for 2-3 hours, right, there has to come a point where you have to go to, listen, I hear what you're saying and I see what you're saying, but we need to move to a conflict resolution space, right? We need to move to a conflict, like, because I'm hearing you, but I seem not to address the core issue. What is the core? What are you fearing right now, Huda? Now, of course, asking those questions is very difficult because, again, that's what a therapist or someone like myself who coaches people will do. I will ask you a question. No, what's the real issue here? Okay, that's it. But let's go a little bit deeper. What is it really? Till you get to the bottom and you hit that bottom. And the bottom is betrayal, rejection, or abandonment. There's that fear there. And so actually, that's why I can't let it go, because I feel like it hasn't been addressed. And the reason why she can't let it go is because she actually hasn't actually said what's really happening to her. She feels imprisoned by her lack of connection, by her lack of admittance about how she feels. She's talking about how she's been hurt, not about how she feels. That's the two different things. To keep talking about how you've been hurt is to make the person the bad person, the villain in your life, to punish them. But to talk about how you feel is very different.
Hear what you're saying. It was, I mean, one of my frustrations with Huda, like I'm always trying to watch this like with this empathetic lens and like, you know, just, I don't know, like, again, you guys were dealing with conflict.
Yeah, respectfully. Yeah, it's hard because I want to like badmouth her, but respectfully, yes, it is a lot of, even I can say this because even the girls and Hannah, and they all said this when they talked to her. It was like, yeah, respectfully, it's a lot of I. In any conversation, it's a lot of I. So,
yeah. Listen, I get it. I'm asking the questions. I know you want to be a gentleman here, but like, I think again, like, that's why we watch these shows. We appreciate, you know, like, you're clearly not coming in here to like talk shit, you know, and things like that. But so
almost everything she said was rooted in I, or I maybe did this, or I might have been toxic, or I might have done this. So yeah, I think she'll come out of here and see some things. I know that I'm seeing some things about myself too. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that I hope she can come out of here and see some things where it's like, oh shit, okay, maybe. That was
initially when America matched you with Iris, it was like her narrative, at least what we saw, was her being like, yeah, you must be doing shit behind my back, Jeremiah, because America's trying to protect me. Now, granted, like in fairness to Huda, like Alandria, I think like kind of like planted that seed. Obviously, the girls were just like having her back.
Now, can we pause it here, because some people were giving me doo-doo about the fact I called that Alandria, and he just said it. It's a white man saying it. No offense, I just want to say that because I'll make sure that someone's going to say that I'm a black man, I don't like black women. You know how people get. This is a YT man, okay? Even he saw Alandria planting seeds in Huda's mind. Now, she's not the only one. Ace also was planting seeds in Huda's mind, all right? The conversation with Taylor and all of these people planting seeds in her mind, which is causing her to crash out even more, right? Okay, so like I said, Alandria wasn't the only person, but like I said, Alandria had I don't know what, she had a fetish for Jeremiah. I don't know what was going on. Why she had to kept on mentioning Jeremiah as an issue. The fact that she was so wrong should tell you that something's an issue here. If Alandria keeps seeing an issue with Jeremiah and Jeremiah is not an issue, that tells us that Alandria's discernment's off.
This, that, and the third. And like, she was like, when I make, after I say this, actually, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but she was like, when I say cute comments, you make faces and people see that. But the cute comments are jokes about kids or marriage. So she'll say a joke about kids or marriage, and I'll be like, what? Like, da-da-da-da. And she'll take that as me not liking her as much as she likes me. So I'm like, I already lost at that point. But yeah, it was just things like that. Like,
okay, yeah. She's like, she's talking about your wedding, and you're not responding the way you want.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we move on from Huda, like, I guess, like, what are your final thoughts on that relationships? Like, any regrets? I know, like, you have no regrets, but like, just being a little bit more reflective.
Yeah.
How would you want people to like just feel about that relationship, or just make, you know, whatever thing clear, you know, for people who have a lot of opinions about your guys' relationship?
Okay. I would say one, it was very real and very genuine off the bat. It got a little toxic due to me not nipping in the bud the crazy expectations that she had set for me early. And then the communication at the end was just not being perceived well. When I was trying to de-escalate, she would kind of crash out. But at the end of the day, I just know that moving forward, like what I learned from it is not being intimate too soon. And then when I feel something about this is moving way too fast, instead of just like dealing with it or trying to be Superman because I like the girl, to be like, well, like, I'm not comfortable with this. But at the end of the day, it was very real. And like, we still have a lot of, you know, love for each other. But just our communication styles, I'll just say that, are a little different.
Okay.
Now I want to say, I'm going to end it here. There's a bit more. He addresses Ace and stuff. I'll do it tomorrow, part 2. I want to say that obviously as well, you know, I love the fact that Jeremiah is probably one of the most self-aware contestants on this show, or any show I've watched on reality TV. I have watched a lot of interviews with a lot of reality stars, and I think he's probably the first out of a lot of people that have been very self-aware to take accountability where they knew that they could have done better. This tells me that this tells me that my instincts about him was very right, and that this is a very sound individual. There's things he can work on, don't get it twisted. But the fact that he could already connect and dictate and tell us where he went wrong and what he could have done better. You don't have that from many people on any show. I want to be honest with you. And like I said, a lot of women were triggered by Jeremiah on this show in the early days. Now that tells you something. Like I said, both men and women, they get triggered by people, but a lot of times it's because you're toxic yourself. So you get triggered by things. He was love bombing. He was doing all this, and he wasn't doing any of those things. But because you felt some type of way, because you've done some crazy toxic stuff yourself, you start putting yourself in Huda's shoes. I need you to check that. Now, Jeremiah is not the most. I'm not saying that Jeremiah is the perfect human being. No, what I'm saying to you is though that this is the kind of level of accountability we need to see from men in general when it comes to not just reality TV but life in general. Because if you have that level of accountability and self-awareness, you're always going to want to grow and you're always going to want to do better. This is the kind of person. But as we heard, he went into therapy, so we know. You know, and so actually his castmates, Ace, Olandria, Amaya, Austin, Nick, Taylor, they need to be in therapy. Because this level, the bar has been set even higher. I now see why Ace hated him, and I'll do a separate live tomorrow. I can see why Ace hated him. I get it now. I really get it now. Now I really get it. Ace didn't just hate him because he was good looking. He was a good looking dude who also was sensible and ran to the beat of his own drum and actually was a decent individual. I can see why Ace hated him, because it made him hate himself. It made him look at himself and realize I can't match that. Not only is he taller, better looking, he acts better than me. There's no weaknesses where I can expose it so I can look better. But that tells you something about Ace, because instead of Ace going, let me learn from him, let me understand where he's coming from, instead of Ace actually being like, let me just tap into him and see what I can learn and glean from him, instead he turned him into an enemy. Right? And V, absolutely. But the producers did him a favor. The producers did Jeremiah a favor by sending him home. Because let me tell you something. When you are a true soul, you struggle to be on a lot of reality TV shows that are toxic based. Reality TV shows require most people, to be toxic on that show. And so actually, Jeremiah had to go. I've changed my mind about it. Thank God for Love Island producers sending them home early. And I beg they don't send him back in. The show is built for toxic, broken people who have not healed and need that. They feed into that. It's a nasty machine. And so the people that usually flourish on reality TV like that have very dark triad traits. So Jeremiah, Jalen, they've been blessed because they've come on the show. Even Bella to a point has come on the show. And actually what they've left early, they've actually been blessed. You get what I'm saying to you? And that's actually how a lot of times these reality TV shows work. We've seen it with Ready to Love. Toxic people get to the furthest reaches because they're willing to play a game. Authentic people don't make it far in the reality TV space because the truth of the matter is, even us included, we like toxicity. Okay? So, look, we got to go. My time is up. But make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notifications of the uploads. We'll appreciate you guys, man. I'll be back tomorrow with a bit of a deeper look. I know that Jeremiah's on another interview, so I might do another interview later on, as well. So, yeah, Pepe is also seeming like a good person. I'm going to do that live tomorrow. That's a live tomorrow I'll do as well. So, yeah, we'll do that. But also, last thing, just remember as well, the show, like Love Island, do psychology breakdowns of people. So the show has psychologists before they get onto the show. So the show is actually responsible for the madness that they created because they intentionally chose people they know psychologically attacked in the head. Just want to be honest with you. So the show has to be accountable. Like if they didn't do any psychological tests, we can say, oh, they got a random bunch of people. It's crazy. No, the show actually has psychologists. They go through psychologists first. They do psychological tests. They find out their personality, their styles, whatever they do. They find out their weaknesses, their strengths, their this. They find out all those things and they choose those people. So yeah. But make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notifications, uploads. We appreciate you guys. Stay locked, stay loaded. We'll see you again soon.